Focaccia bread. Who doesn't love focaccia? I know I do. I absolutely love it. It's crispy on the outside and super airy and like fluffy on the inside with like all different toppings. But unfortunately, a lot of people are afraid of making it because the process can be a little lengthy and complicated. But in this video, I'm gonna show you not only a fantastic tried and true recipe, but also a very easy process that's gonna make your life so much easier. And at the end, I'm gonna show you how I reheat it, because yes, you can put it in the freezer and have it for months and reheat it every time you want, but there's a trick to it so that it's always crispy and delicious. Hi, I'm Chef Sabrina, teaching you the cooking and baking techniques you need to tackle any dish you've always been too afraid of trying. And if you like my videos, please consider subscribing. Okay, so very quickly, let me just show you what you're gonna need to make this recipe. A mixer, you're gonna need a scale, because when we are baking and when we're making pastries, we follow formulas, really not recipes, so they have to be very accurate. And so we weigh our ingredients. And I'm gonna put the recipe and everything on the comments and also on my Instagram page. So we have all-purpose flour, and then we have semola, which is not semolina. It's actually durum wheat flour, just like semolina, but it's actually ground much finer. You can use semolina. It's okay. And semola is actually very easy to find online. So it's not something that, it's impossible to find. And that's gonna actually absorb a lot of the water that we're gonna put in our recipe. So it's gonna make it really, really fluffy and like almost creamy inside. Water, instant dry yeast, a little bit of sugar, salt, extra virgin olive oil, and then lard. Lard, yes. A lot of breads use lard, especially when the recipes come from Europe. They use a lot of lard because it makes the bread really crispy. And the focaccia we're making today is Focaccia Pugliese. So it's traditional from Puglia, the region of Puglia in the south of Italy. It's really like, it's large, it's thick, it's so delicious. If you don't have lard, you can use vegetable shortening. I just wanted to show you this because I think it's too cool. I made this during the Christmas time. I usually cook pork for New Year's, and I render the lard of the pork. And so you can see the top is the fat, is the lard, clean lard, and then the bottom is like the little pieces of crackling mixed with the lard. It's so delicious with eggs and tomatoes. Okay, so let me show you how I make the focaccia. And I used to make this in a completely different way when I first started making it. And it took so long that it was actually not good for the dough, because this focaccia has a lot of water. It's super, super light and sticky, but that's how it's supposed to be. So it used to take me a really long time to try to incorporate the water. So I learned from the fabulous bakers at King Arthur Flour this process that I'm gonna show you. And they don't know me, they have no idea who I am, but I absolutely love their product. So I'm gonna add the liquids on the bottom of my bowl first, okay? And then I'm gonna build the ingredients up, finishing with the yeast. I'm gonna put most of the water. I'm just gonna hold back on a tiny bit. This is about half a cup that I'm saving to finish off. And I'm gonna add most of the salt, but not all of the salt. So those are the two ingredients that I'm gonna leave behind a little bit. I'm gonna add some of the salt, but I'm gonna leave half of the salt for the last part of the process. And then the extra virgin olive oil. So as you can see, all the liquids first, except for the salt, because I want the salt to be away from the yeast, but also I want the salt to dissolve really well in the water. Then the lard, and then I'm gonna go in with the dry ingredients. Here's the semola, then my flour, then the yeast, and the sugar. Let's start mixing. This is another really important trick. You would think that because we're making bread, we're going to mix everything with the hook attachment. And yes, we will finish with the hook attachment, but we're actually going to start with the paddle attachment. If you were gonna make this by hand, then you only have your hand. So it's fine, just keep using your hand or a bench scraper. But if you do have a mixer, let's start with the paddle attachment, because what this is going to allow us to do is to incorporate everything a lot faster without having to overwork overwork the dough by having to work it for a really long time. And then also it's going to allow us to bring everything together without having to crank the speed of the mixer. And that's a tendency. People get anxious because things are not coming together, and then they speed up the machine. And what that does is that it overworks the dough. It develops way too much gluten, and then you have a really tight dough. And this dough is like really fluffy, really sticky, really light. So we don't want to do that. So the paddle attachment is the key to bring everything together first, and then we switch to the hook. So I'm gonna mix everything little by little first, and then let it go. And as you can see, everything came together really, really quickly. If I was gonna do this with the hook, it would have taken so long. See, it looks like something went wrong, right? Nope, this is how it's supposed to be. Keep going a little longer. Make sure you pull from the sides and also from the hook. After the first 5 minutes, you can increase the speed to medium speed. Okay. Before I get started with the sticky part, I'm gonna prep my oven because that's where I'm gonna proof my breads. It's just like the perfect environment to proof breads because it's an enclosed environment. And actually, I can actually add some boiling water to it before I put the breads in to get some humidity in. I mean, I don't have a proofing box, and this is a really good way of doing it. You could also do it inside of the microwave if you had just like a little loaf. And if you can't use your oven because you're actually cooking in it at the same time, then just leave it on the warmest place in your house. Cover it with some plastic wrap if you're gonna leave it out. But since I'm gonna use my oven, I'm gonna boil some water and then put it in a little container and get it in the oven. And then I'm just gonna shut the door and let the oven become really humid, and that's gonna help the proofing of the bread. And what do I always say? Taste, 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 right? People say I'm crazy when I tell them to taste the raw doughs that they make, but it's a great way of understanding if you did something wrong. Because the more times you make your recipe, and if you taste your dough every single time, you actually start learning how it tastes like. And if you do something wrong, then you'll actually taste it, and you can actually go back and maybe fix it before you bake it. Because after you bake it, you know, that's it. So let's taste the dough. Let's see. This dough is salty, and that's a good thing. You need the saltiness to crisp up the bread, to make the recipe work, and also to give a lot of flavor, of course. I can actually taste the extra virgin olive oil, which is so important. It's a very important ingredient in this recipe. I don't taste the lard, so don't be afraid of that if you think that it's gonna taste porky. It doesn't taste at all, and that's it. And I don't taste the yeast, which is also very important because this bread actually has a very low percentage of yeast. We don't want a bread with a big percentage of yeast because that makes our stomachs bloated. Have you ever eaten a pizza or a bread and you feel like completely bloated? That's because it has a lot of yeast that didn't mature completely. So this one has a very low percentage of yeast. You can eat the whole thing and you're not gonna feel bloated. I mean, you're gonna feel full because you ate the whole thing, but you're not gonna feel like swollen. Okay, so we're ready for the sticky part, the scaling of the dough. We have 2 kilos in my recipe, and I'm gonna use these foil tins, like I said. Even though they're different shapes, I'm gonna put 500 grams on each. So these ones are gonna be a little higher. These are gonna be a little bit more flat, but still a really nice height. You can vary the weight of the dough that you put in each container. Obviously, it will depend on what size pan you wanna make. You can make a huge one with 2 kilos of dough. I've made like individual portion ones, and they're delicious when you have a dinner party. The key is to put some extra virgin olive oil on the bottom. So make sure that you use good quality extra virgin olive oil. That's very, very important. When we cook with bad ingredients, we end up with bad results. I'm gonna show you how to scale. You turn your scale on, you put your container on top, and you press the tare button so it's to 0, okay? That's very important because otherwise you would be weighing the weight of the container, and we don't want that. So I'm gonna put about 8 grams. And I'm gonna spread it around really, really well. Also on the sides of the container, and they actually don't stick. The only one that might stick is one that we are gonna put some tomato sauce on top of. So that's that on the bottom, and then on my hands, just to prevent that from sticking too much to my hands, even though it's gonna stick anyway, it makes it a little easier to handle. Tare again, because we want it to be 0, and now I'm gonna weigh 500 grams. Can help myself here. See, it looks super sticky, and it is very sticky. Let me also put some extra virgin olive oil on my bench scraper. And I'm gonna put it on the side and make the next one. And now to the fun part, the spreading, which is probably what you've seen in a lot of videos or a lot of pictures. You actually have to schiacciare. It's called schiacciare, which means to like press and then also stretch through the container. But you have to do it gently. It's not really that violent. It's not that you're gonna like release your stress with the poor dough. So extra virgin olive oil in the hands, and you're basically going to stretch the dough to the sides of the container. And then once you have it stretched, then with your fingers or with your knuckles, you're going to start punching it a little bit, but gently, gently. You don't need to be too violent with this, just until it reaches the ends of the container. In this dough, you're not gonna have indents. It's really, really soft. So I know you've probably seen videos that you can leave the indents of your fingers on the dough. Not in this one. You're gonna be able to stretch it really easily, but the indents are not gonna stay. So don't worry about that. Okay, so our focaccia is ready to proof, and we're gonna put it in the oven that we put the boiling water in, so it's nice and steamy now. It's not too hot, we just want it really humid and steamy, okay? And these are gonna proof for about 2.5 to 3 hours. And every half an hour, maybe every 45 minutes, I'm gonna take the water out, boil it again, and put it back in so it's always humid. And now we're ready to put the toppings on. So I'm a traditionalist and I love tomato sauce and oregano, like I said. My favorite, again, is with anchovies, and I know a lot of people don't like them, but I feel it's because they haven't tasted really good anchovies. So hopefully you'll give it another try. So you just spread the tomato sauce, and I just use my hands. Clean hands are the best tools. I'm gonna push a little bit once I have all the toppings that I want on top. Some oregano. And now I'm going to add my anchovies. So I'm just gonna cut little pieces. And if you wanna learn how to cook with anchovies, because they're actually a great way of adding flavor to many dishes, even roasts or braces. Let me know in the comments below. All right, see, I pushed them a little bit. I'm gonna go like that with my fingers, and that's it. So I'm gonna do the rest with more toppings. I'm a traditionalist, like I said, so I love extra virgin olive oil. I'm gonna use my rosemary one with more extra rosemary and some Maldon salt. And then maybe one with cherry tomatoes, and that's it. And they'll go in the oven. Let me show you how that looks. Okay, so these guys are ready to go in the oven. They are gonna take about half an hour, and I'm gonna put the first 15 minutes at 400 degrees and the last 15 minutes at 380. But remember that every oven is different, so the first time you make them, make sure you check. After the first 20 minutes, start checking them just to make sure that they are not browning or baking too much. But I'm gonna show you how they should look like. It's only like golden brown on top, and you're gonna see it. It's really easy to notice when they're ready to take out. So, in the oven. Okay, so here's the trick for when you want to reheat your focaccia. So when I make focaccia, I never make just one, because even though it's really easy to make, it takes a long time to proof, and I really don't have that much time every day. So I make a bunch and I freeze them. Once they come to room temperature, I put them straight into the freezer, and then I wrap them really well, and I've left them for months. And then I take them out, let them defrost, and then how I reheat them is the trick, because you want to put them back in the oven, but not facing up, but you want to put them upside down. You want the bottom to be exposed. You want the bottom to get crispy. We don't want focaccia with soggy bottoms. So we put it like this in the oven at 375 for about 5 to 7 minutes. When they come out, you can actually touch the bottom, and it's harder. It's super crispy. And so then, and I'm salivating. And then After I take them out of the oven, that's when I cut them. So I don't cut them before, I cut them after they have been crisped up. Every time you wanna reheat it and every time you wanna eat your focaccia and freshen it up, you reheat it upside down. So let's do that because I wanna show you how it looks like. Okay, this is my favorite part. Focaccia's out of the oven. I crisp it up and you can hear it's crispy on the bottom, and now we're gonna cut it. I like cutting it in squares, but you can cut it any way you like. Can you hear that? It's so crispy. Oh my God, and look at the inside. I gotta show you. Look at the beautiful holes. Some of the tomato sauce inside. It is so fluffy, but then the bottom, it's crispy. See? That's exactly what we want. You could reheat this with like some cheese on top if you want as well, like a pizza. Oh my God, I love this. It's so crispy on the bottom, but the inside, it's soft and like almost creamy and pillowy. And the top with the tomato sauce and the oregano, oh my God. So let me know if there's any dish that you'd like to tackle or any technique that you'd like to learn. Write it on the comments below so I can make a video about that and we can keep eating together. Taste, taste, taste.